Hey, I'm Pokemon Professor Dan, and I've been wanting to try out Facebook Live since I got this new phone, so here we go. I have a few minutes to kill before we start Pokemon League, and so I'm going to go through kind of like just a crash course of what we're going to talk about today. Uh, the first thing we're going to talk about, once we do social time and trades and all that, is going to be competitiveness. And we had a really great discussion going on at the end of last week's club about what makes a deck competitive, or even what the word competitive means. So, competitive is, I like to use the analogy of a football. If you have a Nerf football at home, you can play a game of football in your backyard with that football, no problem. Uh, but if you took your Nerf football to the Super Bowl, you probably wouldn't get in. You probably wouldn't do too well with that. As opposed to a real football, the brown leather football, you could play at home, no problem. You could definitely play with a real football, and you could take it to the Super Bowl, and you could perform well there as well. So that's the difference. The Nerf football is a casual football, then the leather football is a competitive football. So today, I'm going to teach you how to make your Pokemon TCG deck more like the leather football that they use in the Super Bowl instead of the Nerf one. So I'm going to flip this. The best way to make our deck competitive is going to be by using certain staples. And we talked about the role of each kind of card in the game in a previous meeting. And just as a reminder, trainer cards are important for moving your other cards to where you need them to be. If you have too many energies in your deck and not in your hand, there are trainer cards to help you out with that. If you're hunting for a specific Pokemon, there are trainer cards to help you out with that. The more competitive you get your deck to be, the more you'll find that it's made up of primarily trainers. Not that you won't run plenty of Pokemon. You'll probably still have 12 to 17 Pokemon in your deck. But the trainers are going to let you play those Pokemon. And I have right here a selection of some of the top staples in the game right now. We're going to go through them and see why they're great, and why almost every deck is running all of these cards, at least one of, and definitely four of some of them. So we're going to start. You'll notice first of all that there is a Pokemon on this chart. This is Shaymin EX, and we're going to talk about him last because it's kind of a special situation with him. We're going to go on to trainers. Here's Professor Sycamore. I know a lot of you probably have this at home. It's not a hard card to get. He's a supporter. And a supporter card, of course, means you can discard, you can only use one per turn. You can only use one supporter. Professor Sycamore says you ditch your whole hand, you discard your whole hand and draw 7 new cards. And that is huge. That gives you a whole new hand. Even if you start the game, you could ditch 6 cards that you're not so crazy about, grab a whole new hand, that's a chance at more energies, and you can have 4 of these in your deck. So 1 per turn, but 4 chances for a whole new hand. That's a huge amount of card advantage. That's going to help your consistency. N over here is similar. N lets you shuffle your hand into your deck, and then draw cards equal to the number of prizes you have remaining. Now, we know we start with 6 prizes, so early on in the game, this is going to reset your hand essentially, 6 cards instead of 7, but if you're losing and your opponent has fewer prizes than you, this is when this card really starts to shine. N forces your opponent to shuffle their hand and then draw cards equal to prizes as well. So if you're kind of getting schooled and your opponent only has 1 prize left, N resets your hand and then downs their hand to 1 card. That's nuts. That's really going to take them out of the next couple of turns. Unless that 1 card happens to be Professor Sycamore, and then they can reset right back up to 7. So we can see already how important these staple supporters are. I have one more supporter that I want to show you, and that is Lysander down here. Now Lysander does not move your cards around. He moves your opponent's Pokemon. He lets you switch one of their benched Pokemon with their active. And the key word there is you get to decide. You choose one of your opponent's benched Pokemon and switch it with the active. This can let you pull a vulnerable EX Pokemon, hint hint, and put it into the active slot for a quick knockout, or it can make a big chunky Pokemon that's really messing you up, throw them onto the bench. Maybe they have a Pokemon that has a big retreat cost, like a Garbodor on the bench. You could pull that forward, and now that's a big hurdle for them to get that attacker back out. So Lysander wins you games. Decks are generally running 3 to 4 Lysanders. Something to note is the last 3 cards we talked about, Lysander, N, and Professor Sycamore, wow, are all supporters. This card in the center is called Versus Seeker. It's an item trainer. You can play as many items as you want per turn, but this card lets you take any supporter from your discard pile and put it back into your hand. Every deck is running 4 Versus Seekers. I mean, 3 occasionally, but really 4 Versus Seekers. Now you have 7 to 8 Ns. Now you have 7 to 8 Professor Sycamores. Hey, look, your first hand has Professor Sycamore, N, Lysander, and let's say a couple Pokemon you don't really care about. Play the Sycamore to discard your hand, and now Versus Seeker has a ton of targets. This can be another Sycamore, it can be N, it can be the Lysander. That's why this card is so good. Despite the fact that it's an uncommon, Versus Seeker has only seen 1 printing in the current standard environment, so this unfortunately can go for about $4.50 to $5 each. I really think that that's not too bad for such an important staple, and it's really going to smooth your deck out. Unfortunately, there is not a great recommendation for a cheaper card for this. I mean, there's some recovery cards, but this is just so powerful, you're really going to need it. The last couple staples are all items, and they're all fairly easy to get. This is Trainer's Mail, probably the next most expensive staple, maybe $3 to $4 each. But this lets you look at the top 4 cards of your deck and take a trainer from there, except another Trainer's Mail, and put it into your hand. And I don't think I need to point out that all of these staples have been trainers so far. Because it's an item, you could play Trainer's Mail to find the Professor Sycamore, to discard your hand, to draw 7, which might have a Versus Seeker. So now next turn, you can use the N you discarded. These will all help with the consistency of your deck, doing what you want to every turn. We have Ultra Ball, which is almost a 4 of in every deck. It lets you discard 2 cards from your hand and search your deck for any Pokemon and put it into your hand. And while some people might think, wow, I'm losing 3 cards for 1 Pokemon, it's well worth it in this game where you have draw 7 cards as a staple, you know what I mean? So 4 Ultra Balls, almost always in a deck. This is the one staple that's been printed in like every set since the beginning of time. It's really easy to get Ultra Balls. And there's a chance in this new set coming out, Sun and Moon, that we're going to get like a secret rare alternate art Ultra Ball. That's going to be nuts. And then finally I have Switch down here. This is a kind of an honorable mention, but a lot of decks run it. And it's Lysander for yourself. It is an item, so it doesn't take up your supporter play. But you can switch your active Pokemon with one of your benched Pokemon. That can get you around a retreat cost, or it can protect your vulnerable EX Pokemon. So that's a real review of the staples in the Pokemon card game right now. And the last thing we're going to do is just take a quick look at the guy right there at the top, Shaymin EX. Now I know you guys, everyone watching now, is probably around my age, so I don't really have to break down the vocab for you, but we're going to talk about what a barrier is and what the word entry means. Because for a lot of people, Shaymin EX is considered to be a barrier to entry in the competitive scene for the Pokemon TCG. It's almost a 4 of requirement in most decks. Some can get away with running 2, but 3 to 4 is much more common. And currently, Shaymin EX, even this regular art, is running about $55. What's so good about this card is when you bench it, it doesn't even have to be active, but when you bench it, you refill your hand up to 6 cards, which is nuts. It's not a supporter, so you could bench multiple Shaymins in one turn to keep refreshing your hand if you need to. And its attack, for 2 energy, which is 1 double colorless energy card, deals 30 damage, and then returns a Shaymin and all the cards attached to him back to your hand. So you can re-bench Shaymin next turn to set up again, and it keeps the vulnerable Pokemon out of the active slot. He's too good to ignore. It's just an insane amount of card advantage. We recently got some great official news we got some great news from the Pokemon card game company. At least in my opinion, it's great. But the set that they printed Shaymin EX in, Roaring Skies, they made an official statement saying, we underestimated the amount of demand for this set. We're going to do a full reprint. Like, they're booster boxes, you can pre-order them. They're just fully reprinting the set because it was so packed with staples. And that, to me, someone who has not been investing in cases and cases of Roaring Skies to try and turn a profit on Shaymins, is great news. I really don't see the regular art Shaymin staying anywhere higher than 20 bucks after a full reprint of Roaring Skies. Maybe we'll be surprised and just he'll get snatched up so fast, but there's no way it's going to stay at $55 to $60 a pop. So I thought that was really cool news. It's really bringing some of those barriers down and hopefully making the last of these staples more accessible, especially to young players. Thanks for joining in. I hope you learned a little something about the Pokemon TCG. I'm going to get ready to go to the actual league and do this again. And, you know, I'm going to keep trying to do these little videos whenever I have some time. I have, like, this right again. We also have, like, we're going to go over the basic rules of Pokemon and whether or not you can bench them. We are going to go over, like, the special conditions, confusion, paralysis, stuff like that. So I'll be seeing you around. Try and catch them all or something.